This is integrating the cognitive science practices into your classroom. A really lengthy, and I thought after I should have changed that and made it really more catchy and stuff. But whatever. You're here now, and maybe you can help me with a new title for it at the end of it. For those of you who don't know me, I am Chris, and I work with HRCE in the, as Megan said, the Technology Integration Lead Team, part of TILT. I see many of you have done the quadrant number 2 there, that Google form, which is wonderful. So good to see that we have people from all over the province joining us this morning, and welcome. Thank you very much for coming to spend 60 or so minutes in this session, which has kind of been like a passion project of mine, I will say. It's been something, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but something that's been on my radar for the last few years now, these cognitive sciences. And I believe I put in a proposal last year. It wasn't accepted, and so I just kind of sat there. And when it was accepted this year, I was really pleased because it kind of gave me a chance to take all my resources and pull them together into one place. And that's what we're going to be sharing today. So you've got a copy of this interactive agenda, and you can see a lot of things here on the screen. There are a lot of resources that you have access to on that last page of, or one of the last pages of my slide deck, which you have early access to for coming here, because I haven't posted it yet to the shared link for the summer IT camp, but I will get to that later. But you've already got it. So anyways, we're gonna get started and move right into it. I want you to think about this image for a moment. It's somewhere in my presentation, and that was on my agenda as well. All right, so if you think you see that at some point, put it in the chat box. And we should just say that Megan is moderating and watching the chat box for questions that might pop up. Here's our goals for this session. My goals for you, and really just kind of understand what is the research behind these cognitive sciences. Okay, and it really is research-informed practice. That's the great thing about it, and I love that we talk more and more and more about research in the field of education all the time. We're not just going off of anecdotal comments anymore. Oh, I heard this from the teacher down the hall. We have actually, because of the digital realm, been able to broaden and touch base with a lot more research in the from around the globe. And I'm hoping that you will have one activity or modification that you can take and try in your practice this fall, okay? I'm just going to say that on my screen, I get all these notifications. And believe it or not, this is usually the time of day that my family starts to text me and tell me things and that. So if that happens, it pops up on the screen, just ignore it. But it has happened. So here's something I just want to lay out right now. You're going to forget this presentation in 30 days. I would even say that you're going to forget this presentation in 3 or 4 days. And it's a fact. We learn, we forget. We learn fast, but we forget just as fast. And so that's the key. How can we prevent that slide? We always talked about the summer slide, the summer slide. Well, let's forget about the summer slide that happens with our students. There's a daily slide that we have to be aware of. So what do we need to do? Well, let's kind of get into some of the broad strokes before we get into some of the nitty-gritty things that we can do in the classroom. I'm going to share a video. It's only a minute long here. And I don't think this is I have to go back here. I have to slide out of my presentation because it's a Vimeo. I'm going to just play this right from my screen. I've got, hopefully you can all hear this okay. And this is Linda Darling Hammond, who is an educational researcher. So I'll close that off. And it's really short.
One of the things we know from cognitive science research is,
and I don't think, can you see that on the screen, Megan? Is that video showing?
Yes, I can see it. I can hear it too.
Okay, good. All right, excellent. Thank you.
that inert knowledge, that is things that you memorize, spit back and never use, does not stick. And about 90% of the things that you might take in, memorize, use on a test and never use again, disappear. You don't have those usable in your brain later.
Consider a study done by Lawrenceville Academy, one of the most exclusive boarding schools in the US. They asked returning students to retake their science finals just 3 months after having completed their courses. Even though faculty eliminated all low-level details from the final, the average grade on these exams fell from a B+ to an F. Across 2 years and several courses, not one student still had command of all major concepts they'd presumably mastered just 3 months earlier.
All right, that's the bad news, right? There's been a lot of research done in this area to show that students, and not just students, anybody, we forget what we've come in contact with quite quickly, and that's not good. But there are ways. This is the nice thing about the cognitive sciences, is that there are now more ways that we can integrate into our practice to make sure that slide is not so drastic. Now, I've called it cognitive sciences in my title, and I've referred to it a couple times already. There's a lot of other words associated with this, okay? Neuroscience, metacognition, science of learning, brain-based science. It's all kind of the same field. Now, it's broad, though. That's the thing. We can go into, we've seen a lot of brain-based research even coming into culturally relevant practices, and which is wonderful. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, but it's really vast, and you'll see things in this presentation and you're going to go, I'm doing that. So this presentation might give you the opportunity to kind of reaffirm some of the practices that you're already doing in your classroom with your students, okay? It also might give you the chance, like I said in the goals, to modify or tweak something and take something back, and now you're going to try it this way. It also gives you that ammunition to kind of say, that's the why behind this. So these are some words that you might want to Google later on, but they're all associated with kind of that same field of brain-based research. And there's been a lot of this done, and we can kind of say, because we're getting better at studying the brain, and that's really where this is coming from. But, and this is a big but, there are things that we know about learning that we have to convey to our students. We know that learning can be hard. It's not the same for everybody, all right? We know that. We are getting better at inclusion, UDL, differentiation. Those are all ways to make learning better. That's a whole other session or course. I'm not going to get into all that today. You're going to see things that are UDL based in this presentation, or scaffolded ways of doing things. So keep that in the back of the mind. You'll make connections to it. We need to let our students know that learning takes time. Okay, we are in a world now where instant gratification is prevalent, right? Games, man, you get instant feedback in a game, right? In video games, and we want that, we crave that, the brain does, right? But we need to let our students know that, you know what? Sometimes it just takes time, and there isn't always that immediate payback, right? You don't always see the results of all that hard learning that you're doing. So that goes along with what we've now referred to as that productive struggle, right? Students don't want to hear that term. We see it, though, in the classroom, and we want to foster that as well. But that's where we can modify some of that productive struggle to better meet our needs of our students, right? Last point there is that we are stuck with this, folks. It's part of the way that we're wired. Short-term memory is just that. It's short-term. It gets in there, and it's gone, right? And there are ways that we can improve that, and there are ways that we can make the connections a little more solid. The last thing I want to say is a myth. And this myth was certainly prevalent when I was in school, and I'm sure for many of you too. And that myth is that if we just show up to the building, you will learn. And we know that's not always true, right? We know that the school-based building isn't always where the best learning takes place. Well, we experienced that this spring as well with another shift, but that's another story. Did it work there? Yeah, there were some successes. We can't say that, e-learning was a complete failure or anything. There were some positives that came out of that too. So we need to know that learning is occurring 24/7. So, why are we really concerned with this? Because we've seen this with the move to mastery learning, and that is really becoming more and more prevalent in the ways that we have been integrating and incorporating into our classroom practices. I'm looking at the Nova Scotia grade 7, 8, 9 curriculum renewal and how they are working towards inquiry-based learning. And that's all on the mastery learning continuum, right? So we're moving away from the performance-based, away from the test, the way that, you got it A, you didn't get it D, you're in between C plus B, right? So we're moving more and more away from that. And that's a good thing. And that's a good thing. So we know, and we've seen it and we've experienced it, that learning is at its best when it's meaningful. We've got to make it stick with the kids. We've got to make it relevant for them. And this comes back to all kinds of things like cultural relevant pedagogy and inquiry-based learning and problem-based learning and makerspaces. Again, a lot of those full sessions, not going to talk about them today, but know in the back of your mind that you're doing some of those things that is making learning meaningful. This graphic, I was in a webinar on Monday, believe it or not. Lots of stuff going on with this field. And this was one of the graphics that they shared. And I thought just kind of good to kind of look at. We're going to talk about some of these things a little later on. So again, from this webinar, we're going to focus on the hands-on, minds-on type of things in the classroom. We're not going to focus on those hands-on things like the maker spaces and activities. Lots of other good sessions are doing that. But from this, we're going to look at, this has got the 6 phases of memory and learning. And everybody, this is the thing about researchers. They all have to take and put their own spin on it so that they can kind of push it out there and go, ooh, look what I've kind of come up with, right? And this 6-phase model is, you're going to see connections to this in about 4 phases or 3 ways. It's all, everybody's got their own spin on it. Some of them are more meaningful to classroom teachers than others, right? I've got the last box highlighted there because when you look at this, the stages here, it's number 6. That's where we tend to fall down as classroom teachers. And I don't mean fall down. I'm just saying that we run out of time. And this is where we kind of say, whoops, bell went, it's time to go, or pack up your bags, shut your Chromebooks, whatever it is. So we need to kind of make sure that we are doing this extending and applying portion to get the content that we want to transfer to our students into their long-term memory. There are some techniques and tips in this session that's going to help you learn how to do just that today. Okay, so just a couple other slides here on some of the research. Of course, to make learning meaningful, curiosity is key, right? The research shows that those parts of the brain that are associated with curiosity light up. Whenever it is, it just fires, right? It's the active portion of our brain. So we need to kind of bring in curiosity whenever possible, because it's directly associated with learning. Another graphic from this webinar I attended. Again, little more details on phases 1 through 6. And you can see immediate, that's what we tend to do, introducing subject areas to the students. Short-term working memory, phases 3 and 4, classroom, right? Phases 5 and 6 might be homework, might be a big project, might be, whoops, bell came, time to go. We don't have time. So not always, but that tends to be where we do kind of miss some of the opportunity here. So this is what research shows, and I've got the link to this blog post on at the bottom of the slide, which you'll have access to. And this, I do want to kind of expand on a couple of these points. Number one is crucial because we are in the information age where we have more information available at our fingertips than ever before. And that does not mean more learning. In some ways, don't you feel that you know less? I certainly do. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, I know that, but you know, what does Google say? Or I might need to go to Wikipedia on that. There's so many resources out there that you start to question yourself. So it doesn't always mean more learning. I've mentioned point number 2. We know how big the emotional component plays in learning, and there are books out there that get into this through cultural relevant pedagogy, and we know that, you know, that fight or flight, if that's going on in the brain, no learning is occurring, right? So emotion plays a big role. It's great to see that mental health and social emotional awareness is coming into our practices more and more. Growth mindset has been a crucial term that has been used and developed by Angela Duckworth over the past several years. She published the book Grit. If you haven't read Grit, it's worth a read. It's a quick read. And that really was one of the kind of the catalysts in this area too, to bring it in more to the education realm. And we know that we need a variety of things. Multimedia, that helps, but not too much, right? We know that learning styles are a myth, and that we all, guess what? I'm a visual learner. Guess what? You all are. We all like doing that. We all like seeing that. So don't, you know, we don't want to go, oh, we need to do visual, kinesthetic, audio. Yeah, we should be doing that anyways, right? So, and that's another session. Pattern making, social, and if we don't use it, we forget it. Plain and simple, research shows that. So on the screen, I'm going to share with you these 5 books. These are 5 books that kind of got me going in this area. And I'm just going to share with you like 1 or 2 activities from each book, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. If you recognize some of these books, you might know that maybe they're in your library, maybe you own them, maybe you've seen them online. I'm not saying that you have to read one or the other. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but there are some that I think are more appropriate than others, okay? But we're going to focus on each book for the next portion of this session. So the first book is Make It Stick, and it's The Science of Successful Learning. And this book was brought to my attention about 5 years ago. I was reading a blog called Cult of Pedagogy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or not. If you're not, I would say put it on your radar. Jennifer Gonzalez, she's out of New York State, I believe. Excellent, excellent. And she talked about this in one of her blog posts about 5, maybe 6 years ago. And I thought, geez, that sounds interesting. And I immediately signed it out of the library. And that was it. That was kind of like, aha, this is kind of like what I want to know more about. So like I said, this is a long-term passion project I've been kind of dealing with. And then ironically enough, this is the book that really started making the cognitive sciences, brain-based research more popular in the field of education. I read that in a research article, and they attributed this book to kind of starting the wave. So So that was kind of interesting and reaffirming for myself. Now, what are the takeaways from this book? And they talk about some of the learning fallacies and myths. And rereading and cramming doesn't work, okay? And they get into that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on, because it creates that illusion that we are learning. That cramming gives us that immediate feedback that we crave, and it's going in the short-term memory. Hey, we've all done it. We all know how it works, and we all know what happens after, right? I can't tell you anything about that second-year accounting course midterm that I took so many years ago, right? Well, and why should I? But anyways, the other thing is that I want to say that they bring up into awareness is the curse of knowledge. Now, I'm not sure if any of you are aware of this, but you experience it every day. The curse of knowledge is associated with we as experts in content areas related to our particular class. We're the experts in that. When we are experts in that, we can be making assumptions that our learners know it too, or we're going to cut out key points that our learners don't know. Why? Because we're experts in it and we assume they know. So I'm just going to do, this is an experiment that was done. I'm going to just tap out a song here. I want you to hear this. Tell me what song this is. And Megan, maybe you'll tell me if anybody's got a guess. Ready? I'm going to tap out a song here on my desk.
Diana guesses happy birthday.
It is happy birthday. Did anybody else go, nope, not got a clue about what song that was? If you didn't know what that song was, that's the curse of knowledge. Because in my head, I'm like, yeah, it's so evident, right? I'm doing that song. I'm singing along in my head. So, right, Mike, you said that you not a clue. But so that's just an example, and they've done some research on that tapping. That was the experiment that they did. So what's one thing that we can do to prevent this, what can our students do? Well, some of you are high school or upper grades. I'm just going to play this short video here. It's 1.5 minutes. It's called the Lettner box. And this is kind of a cool technique. I'm going to play it and you can see what they're showing in this video. Oops, no, I'm not. Oh, I love it when it does that. There we go. All right, that's a short video on the Lettner box. So it's it's a way to make use of cue cards, right? And there's so many ways to. You don't have to create the fancy box. I did this when I was studying for my dissertation. There were questions that I need to be aware of and terms and stuff like that. And I did a very similar style, and it's just a technique to kind of help us learn better and be more efficient too. Did you notice when he threw away the cards? I love that. And it's that whole process of, okay, I know that. Why do I need to come back to that, right? So lots of information on that, and this book provided information on that as well. So those are some takeaways from Make It Stick. It's another book that I read kind of next, and it's called Small Teaching and Everyday Lessons from the Science of Learning by James Lang, who maybe he's been at Mount St. Vincent as a guest lecturer, guest sessional. And he's done some interesting work in this field and on the cheating as well. But what Lang kind of brought forth to my onto my radar was prediction. And you can see the quote there. But prediction takes material that you wish to learn and increases your ability to understand it and find it later. So taking a few seconds at the beginning of class and getting people to predict an answer before they even know anything about it, even if it's going to be incorrect, increases retention, okay? And it also makes us curious. We're sitting there now going, I wonder if my prediction will be right. So it's sticking in your brain, isn't it? And then when we get to the portion where we review our predictions, great if you got it right. Maybe you didn't, but opportunity for questioning. Was yours right or wrong? What made you think that? Why did you think that? Lots of questioning that can go on with predicting. So I've got a question for you folks now. Where did I integrate prediction into this session? Exactly. I'm seeing, Carolyn, you were the one to put it in the chat box, and I also noticed that you said, there it is. Exactly. If you think back to early on in the slides, this was a form of prediction. So that's a technique where I've taken a snapshot or a screenshot of that slide, and I just went to an online tool. There are lots of them. You can just Google pixelate image, and you're going to get lots of tools, and you pixelate it. Okay, so that's an easy activity to foster prediction and wondering within your classroom. And the nice thing about the classroom is that you've got more time that you could have them predict. You could do something in the afternoon and have them, not reveal it till, it might be something that occurs at 2:30 or something like that. So get them wondering all day. So that's a fun activity. I've been doing more and more of that all the time. So next in the series was Small Teaching Online. And this book just came out this year, kind of timely. And Lang is again a co-author, but the author, Flower Darby, gets into a lot of good techniques that we can take and integrate into our online platforms. This is written for a kind of a higher ed level. There are some techniques that would work with our students, and this is one of them that I've got on there, and this is scaffolded notes. I don't know if anybody's done a version of this or not, but typically scaffolded notes occur at the end of each chapter in the form of a summary or questions, and we have to do that. But that's kind of the backwards approach. We want to flip that and we want to give students the notes at the beginning, right? So research has been done, and partial notes prior to a lecture or an activity, students perform better on a final exit exam than those who did not receive the notes. Now just think of it with sessions, right? If you're in a session and they give you the notes for the session, like what happens? Don't you breathe a sigh of relief? I know I do. I go, oh, whew, you know, there goes my note taking. I can just kind of sit back and relax and take it in and just add some jot notes along the way. So it's a really good technique. That screen grab, you can find lots of versions of it. I've done this in with a group that was kind of very, I was really starting at a basic level with them on this particular content, and they found those scaffolded notes so valuable. And I had lots of little activities with it too. It doesn't have to be fill in the blank, right? So lots of ways to do this. But this is going to, when you do scaffolded notes, you're going to give them, the process to be active learner or active listeners versus focusing on the notes. So,
Chris?
yeah.
I just want to go back, sorry. Sarah was asking, how is prediction connected to activating prior knowledge?
Well, Sarah, I would say that we are making connections with your prediction. So if you've never seen that activity before, there might be no prior knowledge on that pixelated image thing. But maybe you've been in a prior knowledge with doing a session with Chris, and he's done this before. Hey, I was in this yesterday, and I know he did that. So that might be a way to connect it. But there's, predicting. Maybe you're gonna ask, it's changing it up a little bit from what did we learn yesterday? That's not a prediction, right? That's retention. I'm going to get into that. So maybe there isn't that prior learning. Maybe there is. Hope that answers your question. So lots of ways to do scaffolded notes, and something that might be a way to bring into your practice as well. Same question. How did I integrate scaffolded notes into this session? I love pausing. Yeah, that's right, Mitchell. I gave you the agenda, which has got some activities and notes, right? And there's an activity. I also gave you the vocabulary on that agenda. I purposely put on there the 5 words, not too many, just 5 words that you might go, oh, what has ninja got to do with this session, right? And if you look below, there's an activity that's a link, and it should open up a new Google drawing with something else. But and I didn't have you do it. We don't have enough time to do that during the session, but that is there for you. All right, next book. It's Cultural Responsive Teaching and the Brain. And I have to admit that this book sat on my desk for a couple of years. And I finally grabbed it in December before we went on break, and I said, I'm going to read this. And I went, after I finished reading it, I went, why did I wait so long to read this book? This one is one that I would say you need to read. It is excellent. And the author, Zaretta Hammond, gets into both what's going on with cultural relevant pedagogy and the brain. It's wonderful because she really lays it out there, and she gets into why is it so important to get into the emotional component of our classroom practice with our students. It's because this is going on in the brain, right? So it's wonderful. She really does. Highly recommend this book. She also goes into a lot of time and what timing with regard to our brain. And, our brains are only good for about 12 to 20 minutes, depending on our age, of active processing. So put it this way, folks, I've already lost you, right? You're gone. I need to take a break. We need to take a break. We really should. And looking at my time, I'm gonna keep going. I apologize, but there should be an active processing portion of this session right now, right? Because we have, and our students are saying, it's up and down with the cycles. And after a while, you need a break. You need to step away, but that cycling down doesn't mean you go, okay, everybody go for recess. No, there are other ways to do it, but that cycle down can be active processing of the information that has been given out prior to that when the brain is firing. So, and that break can be about 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be like half hour, 10 minutes, and then it'll cycle back up. So really be aware watching your students, and we're not all on the same wavelength on that. Our brains are, some can handle it more than others. Of course, adults, we can handle it longer. But again, she talks about, that 24 to 48 hour window where we need to come back to information, touch base with it, use it some way, or else it's going to be gone. So that 30 days is really shortened to even less than that. She breaks it down to 4 processes of learning here. And again, you might go, okay, these words mean nothing to me, but I'm doing this in my class. I'm going to just go into this a little bit more here. Ignite is where we capture. Chunk is where we chew on or make it digestible. And chewing it is processing it. And reviewing is applying it. First one's ignite, okay? And so we got to get that passion. We got to get that curiosity going within the classroom, all right? And just saying, and I've done this too, when I was in the classroom, just saying, I'm going to start now, doesn't really ignite anybody, does it? Or saying, are you paying attention? Is not really the same as engagement. So those things we have to kind of be aware of. What can we do to ignite the learners? So think about yesterday's keynote. If you were in attendance for Ken Shelton's presentation, what did he do yesterday? Because I looked at his presentation and I went, he follows this. What did he do yesterday to ignite us? Just giving everybody a moment to process that too. I see Jillian's responded, and if anybody else is. Yeah, exactly, Jillian. It was the mindful activities, those little puzzles he did with us, right? I'm like, that's igniting us, right? What a great activity. And he made it quick. It was quick, boom, boom. We did 2, and then he did another one. If we were face-to-face, he would have given us opportunities to talk. There are so many ways that you can ignite somebody's spark on the learning. And what did I do in this presentation to kind of ignite you into this? Maybe the Google form was igniting you, Sarah, but hopefully you got the opportunity to look at that agenda and kind of go, oh, okay, there's a lot of things here. Like you started to, the whole purpose for that agenda that I designed like last week was to bring in active learning for you folks. We tend to be passive when we come into these presentations, but I was hoping to activate that and make it more that you would be more present within the presentation as well. The other thing is I gave you that big number at the beginning. 90% of what you have learned, you're going to forget, right? So yeah, so there was lots of things there to kind of get you going. And those are the things that we have to kind of do with our students. And we have to kind of, think about that on a very regular basis. What about chunking? So chunking is that, and this is a great graphic because we got to take that whole block and we got to make it smaller. We got to say, okay, we know that we were good for like maybe 10, 20 minutes, and then we're going to lose them for a little bit. So we got to chunk things down. So we know the research shows that when we're doing instructional media videos, 6 minutes, no more, right? I look at a YouTube video and I see it's like 15, 20 minutes. I'm going, forget it, right? I tune out. I don't want to. So chunk things down. To go fast, you got to go slow. Great quote. To go fast, you got to go slow. I try and live by that all the time. So small chunks is better. And guess what? Tomorrow's another day. We're going to come back to it, right? Sometimes we get on that treadmill, but really, whose purpose are we serving? So just keep that in mind. Chewing on it. Give students time. I already mentioned that cycle down. Allow them to process that information for 5 to 10 minutes. Yes, it might be, that's where you put on Go Noodle, right? Or you get up and walk around, or you do some stretching, or you do a little bit of yoga, right? Maybe you're going to say, okay, let's just draw about what I just told you. Draw me what you're thinking. So give them 5, 10 minutes, come back to, the lecture or whatever it is that you're doing, and then ask them questions about, what were you thinking about during that activity? What was the hardest part that I told you before that you were kind of thinking about? Do a little debrief on that. This is also the opportunity that we can start to bring in like infographics, graphic organizers, and more. So you're going to see on that activity on the agenda, I have you doing a Venn diagram with the vocabulary. So I'm having you interact with some of those keywords in this presentation. And I haven't even talked about all those words yet. So if you've gone there and looked at that Venn diagram, that's another form of prediction. Oh, if I do this now, I wonder if I'll be right. We tend to do, and I was guilty of this too, we tend to do Venn diagrams and graphic organizers at the end of a unit, after we're all done. Why not have students? Let's flip that. Let's put it at the beginning. Go for it. Try it. Let's see what you think. So many ways to do digital Venn diagrams too. I just made that one in about 2 minutes. Lots of ways to bring that into your practice. Review. My little icon there, that's looking back, by the way. And I'm just going to say a good activity is finding icons that match the words that you're trying to convey. Because when I typed in review, I was not getting anything that was appropriate. So I'm like, okay, what's another word for review that I want to? So it was really activating my brain. Looking back. How do we look back? Looking back, there really wasn't any great graphics for that. I could have drawn one, but I didn't have time last night. So what's a great way to review, especially in this digital age where we've got devices, games, right? We do that. We do games. We do, Kahoot. And we all love Kahoot music, don't we? But that's a way to do review. Solving mysteries is another way to review. Breakouts, digital breakouts. If you can scaffold and create a digital breakout around your content, great active learning that's going to help fire that into the long-term memory. And of course, inquiry-based projects around the content that the students have helped develop. It's a gold star. Kind of keeping my eye on the time here. Next book, and this is the final book I'm going to talk about, is Powerful Teaching. So my first book recommendation is Cultural Responsive Teaching in the Brain. This is my second one for classroom educators, Powerful Teaching. And I read this again over the winter, and it just came out not too long ago. And it's really based on all the research that's been done up to date, so up to 2019. But it's written by 2 authors, and they've been in the classroom. And Patrice is a grade 6 teacher. And that's why I recommend it, because she talks about it, a lot of classroom applications for the, kind of lower elementary and middle elementary classrooms. So here's their process of learning that they break it down to: retrieval, spacing, interleaving, and feedback-driven metacognition. Okay, so what's that all mean? Retrieving it. This is getting the information out of our head and back to the front of our minds. We want to do a few activities. So kind of like predicting, but a little different. So looking at the screen there might be some things that you've done already. And this is based on retrieving that information. You've done it on Monday. Tuesday, you're going to come out and you're, all right, brain dump everybody on everything you remember from yesterday that we did. So you're probably looking at that going, I do that. I don't do that enough. Good, great. Put these in your toolbox. There are tech tools available for us too that also support this: Kahoot, Plickers, Quizlet, Flipgrid. Hey, why not do a video brain dump? If we're back in the same situation in the fall, e-learning, Flipgrid is your friend. Next portion, spacing. Okay, so spacing, we want to space it out over time. And this is really like Hammond's chew portion. Okay, so there's overlap between this. And this is where spacing doesn't always feel good, right? It doesn't always feel good because we forget things. And this is why cramming feels good, because we know it. But, and I'm guilty of this too, I've got an activity, I want to get it done. I want to get it all done so I can be done with it. But I know if I space it out, like this presentation took me a better part of 5 to 6 days to get all together, and I spaced it out. And I know that coming back to it made it a better presentation over time. I know the content better. I can find errors. I can edit better. So it's that immediate gratification versus spacing it out. What's this look like in the classroom? Some questions there that you can ask. Very typically, we ask, what'd you do yesterday? What did we do? Change it. What did we do last week? What did we do 2 weeks ago? There's a graphic there that I've included from a research article, which is in the resources, shows what spacing looks like. Very typically, we do that blocking, right? We do the mass practice. And then this comes down to that chunking and chewing. Something else that the authors of this book have put out there is a power ticket template. All of these resources from Powerful Teaching are on the web. They're free. They're putting them out there. They just ask for attribution. That's it. So you can go to their website, download these, boom, they're yours. Interleaving. So interleaving is very similar to spacing, and the research shows that there's quite a bit of overlap and also some confusion over this too, but there's a lot of overlap. So if you go, is that spacing or interleaving? Guess what? Doesn't really matter. You're doing it, right? You might have heard of interleaving if you've been doing any math PD, because it's really come into the mathematics field. And I know even HRCE, our math team, has been doing a lot of work around interleaving. And that interleaving, I'm going to show you a graphic here. And this is one that really shows how you mix it up. You might have seen this. I took this off of, I found it on Twitter, and then I went, and I think it was Eric Lee from our HRC math team. He's a math consultant who did it. And you can see, I love the color coding here. So you can see how this is an example of mixing it up with interleaving. So we've got stuff that was done yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago, and then even further back. So it applies nicely to mathematics with problem solving. But everybody's looking at this and probably going, I could do this, and I could try this for. It's another form of a choice chart, right? And we know choice is key with our students and making learning engaging. Something else that goes along with interleaving, and I showed you a version of this earlier in the presentation, are flashcards. Yes, flashcards are making a comeback. And you saw that letterbox video. That was one way of doing it. This might be something that our older students make better use of. I highlight the Quizlet down there in the lower portion of the screen because Quizlet, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, it's a great tool for doing flashcards, okay? Digital tool. So it might be something that you explore a little bit more on your own. Finally, feedback-driven metacognition. Key word here, feedback. We know that feedback is crucial to the learning process, right? We know that good feedback is timely, it's constructive, and it's provides not empty praise. So, not to say that tests and quizzes are all bad. They are a form of feedback, but we don't have to make them evaluative all the time, right? You can do a quiz at the beginning, just kind of show me what you know, right? It's a form of giving timely feedback. So Google Forms does a great job of converting questions into quizzes. If you haven't done that, something that you might want to explore in the coming weeks. All right, so that's the last one from Powerful Teaching. I'm going to share one more section here because this to me is really appropriate for a lot of our students. And this is your bonus material, everybody. And this is drawing. Draw it out. Anytime that we can activate the other side of the brain, drawing, integrates the artistic side. Lots of our kids like to draw cartoons, graphic novels. They're huge, bigger than ever. Give them the opportunity to do it. I've already talked about this a little earlier in the presentation. A big thing right now in the field of education is sketch notes, right? Yeah, you can call it sketch notes. You can call it whatever you want. I know when I was in school and the teacher would say, okay, here's a diagram or draw the diagram. Or I was like, thank God, it's about time. I'm tired of all the words, right? It gives us a break to do that. This is that active processing portion. So give students a chance to draw it out. Lots of tools that we can use. So I'm going to just go with the graphics left to right. Left, that is Google Draw. If you haven't played with not Google Draw, sorry. It's Google. The word has escaped me. I should have put it on my slide notes here. Megan, do you remember what that one is? It's Google. I can't. I put it in.
Okay, it's either put me on the spot.
Anyways, it's a wonderful tool, and it's got AI built into it. It's from the Google experiments side of things. And as soon as Megan says the name of it, I'm going to go, oh, yeah. Okay, coming across to the middle, that's Brush Ninja. This is a wonderful GIF creator. It allows you to capture various drawings and put them into a GIF. And teachers have had their students do. I had a high school teacher who's done, cell bonds and breaking of cell bonds and what happens to the various elements. Fantastic ways to do that. There's so many applications. You could do life cycles with it. You could do a flight, creating the GIFs to show that. It's free. It works on the web. The last one is Google Draw. And Google Draw is a fantastic tool that is underrated within the world of G Suite. I use probably Google Slides the most, Google Docs now becoming the least, and Google Draw quickly becoming the number 2 or 3 app that I use all the time. Google Draw lives under the More menu. And it's a wonderful tool to allow students to express that creative side of things. And I think back to when I was teaching grade 1 and 2, I read a book called Learning with the Left Side of the Brain, because I had to teach art. And I was like, okay, what can I do to be a better art teacher? And that was a book that came, and it was like, oh, okay. So I was back in the 90s when that book came out. And so, just to let you know, brain-based research has been around for a long time. So
Google Auto Draw.
Thank you. It is Auto Draw, right? And it's great because you can draw something on the screen and then it's going to say, do you mean this? Do you mean this? So even those students who have some challenges with what they do, and the mouse is that's a skill, the trackpad and the mouse, they can use that tool, draw something, and it's going to say at the top, did you mean a giraffe? Did you mean a house? Did you mean a school? And it's going to show you, and then you can click on that, and then you've got that graphic. Or you can keep your own. Really cool. I recommend looking into it.